Hello, everyone, and welcome. We are so glad that you're here for today's conversation. If you attended our January event, you'll remember that we talked about a different approach to achieving goals by ditching the New Year's resolution. So, by ditching the New Year's resolution, what we're saying here is instead of making big promises that are often overwhelming and unsustainable, like I'm going to lose 50 pounds or I'm going to get that promotion, something that feels huge. What we're introducing or what we introduced in January was the micro shift method. And what the micro shift method is, the foundation of it is it's a way of making small, realistic changes that fit into your current life and can lead to meaningful results over time. So don't overhaul your life to try to achieve this giant goal. Fit it in little bite-sized pieces. If you missed that conversation, you're more than welcome to check out the replay. I think that would be really valuable. At least I go back and watch it again and again just to see what insights I might have missed the last time. Okay, but January episode aside, today we're going to talk about what happens as we work toward our goals, especially when things don't go exactly as planned. In other words, how we adjust along the way, the topic of our conversation here today. But first, let me introduce to you the two masterful coaches who will be sharing their insights with us. Let me start with Lori. Lori Cunningham is our next gen career and leadership coach. She is passionate about empowering the next generation of professionals to develop leadership readiness. As the baby boomer executives begin to exit the workforce and succession plans start to unfold, Lori's clients are preparing to step into those opportunities with confidence. What a time to prepare for those opportunities. Drawing on over 30 years of leadership experience, she helps emerging professionals step boldly into their next chapter and shape the future of leadership with clarity and purpose. Lori, thank you so much for being here and providing us your expertise.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. Our next guest coach is Dianna Abelmona. She is our health and wellness coach, and she brings a rare blend of heart and strategy to everything she does. After more than a decade in HR, helping organizations build thriving cultures, she shifted her focus to help individuals create that same sense of well-being from the inside out. As a board certified health and wellness coach, she empowers people to prevent burnout, live with intention, and use gratitude as a daily anchor for lasting fulfillment. I also want to note here that she also specializes in helping clients focus on progress over perfection. How perfect is it that we have Dianna here for our conversation today? Thank you, Dianna.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yes. Okay, so let's jump right into the topics. Let's talk about what usually happens when we set goals. What does that look like? Well, we typically start by setting intentions for outcomes that we want to create. Of course, we call these goals. In the health and wellness space, our goals might be something like losing weight, quitting smoking, drinking alcohol less, being more active. For me, I'm trying to get into the habit of meditating more. And if your goals are around relationship, you might want to meet more people so you can maybe find that special someone to partner your life with, or maybe you want to plan more date nights with the partners that you already have. Spending more time with your kids and listening more intentionally to your partners or your loved ones and your family. In career building, maybe your goals would be improving presentation skills, getting more visibility, speaking up more in meetings, and that goal of getting that promotion, it becomes something that is more of an outcome of these little goals that get you there. So once you set those goals, we get to work. Now when we get to work on things, how we work toward those goals has a huge impact on whether or not we reach those goals. But also, not only that, but also it impacts how we experience the journey. So in today's conversation, we'll talk about some of the ways perfectionism quietly interferes with our personal and professional growth. So specifically addressing perfectionism, I'm specifically addressing perfectionism because I fall into this trap all the time. And when I get into this trap, there are pitfalls that I would fall into on a regular basis, and it really stuns my growth. Um, so it would be really valuable to talk about how we can reframe our mindset to release that perfectionistic thinking and embrace progress. And the beauty of progress is we'll talk a little bit more about this. The beauty of embracing progress is you can make baby steps and you can kind of look back and say, wow, I've really come a long way, but it didn't feel so overwhelming. Along the way, we'll check in with our coaches and get some additional insights from their expertise. So let's start by defining perfectionism. What is perfectionism? According to Merriam-Webster, perfectionism is a disposition to regard anything short of perfect as unacceptable. Do we really fall into this mindset? If I think about it, if somebody asked me, "Are you a perfectionist?" I wouldn't say yes, but I also know that there are things that hold me back. And so what happens is I'll realize that I'm setting unrealistically high or rigid standards for myself. And that's the trap. Many of us don't even realize we're operating from a perfectionistic mindset because it often looks like we're being responsible, we're being driven, ambitious, or high performing. So how can we tell when we are in a perfectionistic mindset? Some common signs of a perfectionistic mindset include unrealistic or rigid standards, as I mentioned, fear of making mistakes, all or nothing thinking. I don't fall into that, I don't think, but this is where I have to check in with my coach and say, okay, am I falling into this trap? Chronic self-judgment, difficulty starting, finishing, or sharing work. I have difficulty starting. Finishing, maybe a little bit. Sharing, I don't have a problem with. I don't know. Where do you guys fall into these buckets? Equating performance with self-worth, with personal worth. So let's check in with the coaches. Lori, in the career and leadership space, what specific behaviors might indicate a perfectionism mindset?
Well, I've seen it happen in multiple ways, but perfectionism often shows up quietly and then it's frequently rewarded at first. And I see it when clients, they over prepare for meetings but hesitate to speak up, or when they sit on great ideas because they want them fully baked before sharing. And that can look like rewriting emails 5 times, avoiding stretch opportunities until they feel 100% ready. And that causes delays or meeting deadlines. The other thing, or they're tying their confidence to external validation, like performance reviews or titles. And they tend to require validation at every checkpoint. So they're always checking in, and that creates, those unnecessary checkpoints. So excuses, overwhelmed and quick responses, or on the spot questions. Like they just don't like to react in those types of situations. They like everything up front. And they just really struggle with impromptu situations. So a big signal for me is when someone is incredibly capable, but consistently under visible. So they're doing excellent work, but they're waiting for permission, certainty, flawlessness before stepping forward. And we all know that leadership rarely works that way. But I will tell you this, I've also seen it on the other flip side of that, where someone who claims to be a perfectionist they kind of disrupt because what they do is I've seen it where they'll send down a message and then they'll send out another message and another message. So they're not taking the time to really vet something out. So it's one extreme and the other. It's not just about not doing it, it's about maybe doing it too many times as well. And it's in order to be perfect. So when they do that, they're combining all of those messages at different times to get one message. And sometimes that can be a sign of it as well.
Oh, wow. You just gave me flashbacks.
Yeah.
Um, with the emails, this made me think of how I would rewrite the emails and edit it multiple times. At the end of the day, I send it out, and I'm so proud of my email that I'll go back and read it again, and then my mind goes into, oh, I should have said this way. Like I'm still editing it in my mind, even though I've sent it. Or
Mhm.
if I felt like it was perfect, I would um I would just enjoy the rereading it again and kind of pat myself in the back. And it's like I didn't even realize that by doing that, I am be having perfectionistic behaviors.
I think a lot of that too, if I can just add one more thing to that, is when we do that, sometimes we're visualizing different people and how they're going to respond or react to that email. So what we're
Yeah,
doing is instead of being an individual, what we're doing is we're trying to get into the box of multiple individuals and how they would think. And a
yeah.
lot of that then just paralyzes you.
Oh my gosh. That's so insightful. I gotta watch myself on that. I gotta check in my co with my coaches. Look, I just
I
did
think we
this.
all do.
Diana, when it comes to health and wellness space, what behaviors might we experience that indicates perfectionism mindset?
Yeah, so perfectionism in wellness can sometimes look like inconsistency. Um, and it's not because someone like really doesn't care about what they're doing, it's just because they care too much, right? So you said it before, all or nothing thinking.
Mm,
So if I can't put in my 100%, then I'm not doing anything, right? Then there's constantly restarting instead of like adjusting along the way.
mm,
Because they're like, okay, this isn't working and I'm gonna like start again tomorrow. Like it, so instead of adjusting along the way, which is what we're talking about,
mm,
they're just like always restarting. Um, over researching before taking action. So looking up the thing that they're going to start. What's strength training going to give me? What are the benefits? How many times should I be doing it? For how long? Those are some things I've seen. And then skipping any sort of movement or or focusing on nutrition completely after like just one slip. Um, I know I'm guilty of that where I'm just like, okay, well, I start to think like, well, what's the point? I screwed this up, like I'm just not gonna focus on it for today. And then another one I always see is needing like the ideal plan, the finding the right time, the perfect equipment, the perfect outfits for workout, like things like that. But in reality, it's just all about um the just starting, and for a lot of people have a really difficult time with that. So, yeah.
yeah, that again, I'm getting flashbacks. In this case, it wasn't me, it was my husband. My husband would need the perfect equipment, the perfect schedule, the perfect diet, and he would go out and buy all these groceries. And this side of the fridge has all of the groceries that he needs for his diet, and then he slips, and then it's like all or nothing. That's okay. I'll start over next week. That's he would start with that kind of thing. Um, that's so it's giving me flashbacks.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a real, and like I said, like everyone wants to do better and get healthier. It's just they put so much pressure on themselves to get started.
Yeah. So what could somebody do instead? I don't know if I'm foreshadowing some of our conversation for the later. Like, what could we do instead of the all or nothing when it comes to health and wellness?
I think kind of thinking about in a way where, okay, I instead of focusing on what did I do wrong or like what didn't I do, um looking at it in a way like I showed up today.
Hmm.
Showed up for doing a 10-minute workout when I was supposed to do 20, but I did 10 minutes. And
Hmm.
showing up should be celebrated. Like that's what will kind of start to get like the motivation going.
And maybe that could be the goal. I put my workout clothes on, I showed up, and maybe all you did was check in and walk back out, but do that consistently and then step it up and
Yeah,
then step it up.
yeah, exactly. Or if you belong to a gym, getting dressed, getting in the car, and just driving to the gym.
Hmm.
Not even getting out of your car.
Yeah.
You drove to the gym and you got there, right? So like one step at a time.
Yeah. Oh, lovely. Okay, cool. Um, let's dive deeper. Now that we know what perfectionism looks like, let's talk about why it can interfere with our personal and professional growth. We've touched on it a little bit, but jumping into each pitfall, we have three pitfalls that we're going to talk about. There's many more, but we're going to focus on three key ones. And it's already kind of been mentioned, inaction disguised as preparation. So Dianna already kind of talked about that, doing a whole lot of research. When we aim for perfection, we often delay starting while we wait to feel ready. But what's the reality? Reality is we usually feel ready after we've gained some experience and not before. That's when we start building our confidence toward that thing that we're trying to get to. Some examples, aside from what we've already mentioned. My 16-year-old, he just turned 16 3 days ago. But before that, he's like reading the rules, asking me questions, but he hasn't gotten behind the wheel yet. I said, I'll take you out driving anytime. Like he's just named the date and time and I'll take you somewhere. And he hasn't even, he says, okay, so when you start the car, you step on the brakes. He's like walking through it instead of doing it. I wonder if he's falling into this perfectionism mindset. Or it could be something else, but here's where maybe he might be falling into that. Another example is when we first started doing these monthly coaching discussions here at Inspire, Empower, Achieve. There was a lot of what should it look like? What's the framework? Amy can attest to this. I was planning and planning and planning, and at the end of the day, I really didn't know what format would feel good and play out well until we just started and that's what we ended up doing is we just started and the format has morphed along the way. I couldn't have foreseen that without having just done it. As I was doing some research, I also came across a well-known photography experiment that was conducted by a professor, Jerry, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Yulesman, at the University of Florida. And what he did was he divided his class into two groups, the quantity group and the quality group. The quantity group was graded based on volume of photos that they submitted. The more photos you submit, the higher your grade. The quality group only had to produce one single, nearly perfect photo to get a high grade. The outcome of this experiment was surprisingly to the professor, at the end of the term, the quantity group produced the strongest images overall because they learned through repetition, experience, experimentation, feedback, and they improved through doing. So plan, 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 do does not get you the perfect outcome. Let's check in with Lori. Lori, when we're talking about this pitfall, well, let me ask this. How can we tell when we are doing necessary preparation work versus when we've slipped into inaction disguised as preparation?
Well, yeah, and you've alluded to that already. So preparation becomes inaction when that learning isn't paired with movement. So if
Mm.
you're constantly gathering information but not applying it, if you're not sharing it, if you're not testing it, that's usually a sign perfectionism has taken the wheel. And so I often ask clients, what would you change if you took a small step with what you already know? Leaders don't wait for mastery, they build through their experience. So if preparation isn't leading to action, feedback, or growth, it's probably become a comfort zone instead of that launching pad that you need to accelerate your career.
But I can trick myself into believing, well, if I just find one more study, it would round out my presentation or whatever. Like,
Well, I think you just hit it. It's a trick,
yeah,
right? You just said it. You just said it yourself. It's a
yeah,
trick of the mind. And we can always find those things, but it's us having fear is what
yeah.
it's really related to and moving forward with something. Um, I couldn't explain it any better than what you just did as far as a term. It's a trick. It's a trick
Mhm.
of the mind. And
Yeah.
you nailed it right there.
I know what I keep going back to this, but what helps me is to talk it out. And most of the time, I'm talking it out with my partners, or if I'm talking about with my coaches, which I partner with my coaches. When we stay in this space, what do we stand to gain or lose? There's always a gain, right? But
Mm,
we know what we're losing. What do we think we're gaining?
yeah. So in the short term, you gain a sense of safety.
Hmm.
But in the long term, you lose momentum. You're losing confidence and you're losing that visibility. And in today's workplace, especially with succession planning unfolding, especially with the remote environment, opportunities don't always wait for that perfect timing. Someone else is going to step forward while you're still prepping. So progress favors movement.
Mm. Oh, yeah. Especially in the career space. That promotion's gonna go to
Absolutely.
somebody else.
Absolutely. You have to be quick.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Everybody keep that in mind. All right. Let's jump into the second pitfall. Pitfall number two that we have prepared here is I want to talk about is unhealthy relationship with mistakes. When we aim for perfection, mistakes feel unsafe. But when we take a step back and we kind of get logical about mistakes, um, there's there's so much growth that comes from mistakes. But yet when we like, at least for me, my gut reaction to mistakes is embarrassment, ashamed. I feel like I've failed. Reality is, mistakes are not failures. They're simply events that didn't match our expectations. So imagine a world where your expectation was something else. Would you have felt like it was a mistake, or would you have felt like or I'm sorry, would you have achieved this thing that you were looking for just by simply adjusting your expectation? And so if we zoom out and realize that there's so many paths to our lives and where those expectations are versus where reality is, there's always something to learn or some other opportunity that comes up. And it is really the best, oftentimes the best learning opportunities. And in fact, in history, it sometimes leads to innovation. What comes to mind is post-it notes. I'm sure this is a common knowledge for many people, but for those of you who aren't aware, there was a scientist in the company 3M that first produced and invented post-it notes. This scientist was trying to develop a super strong adhesive and instead created a weak one. And they wrote it off as a failure. And then a few years later, one of his colleagues was getting frustrated with his bookmark coming out of his book and falling out, that he used this adhesive to adhere his bookmark to his book without damaging his pages. And thus they went, oh, genius, post-it notes. Um, what an invention that came out of accident, out of a mistake. And then also the other example I wanted to share with you is penicillin. Did you know that that was also discovered by accident? There was a technician who was known or had the reputation of being a careless lab technician where he was working, and he went on vacation and left an uncovered petri dish of bacteria sitting out. When he returned from vacation, mold had grown over it, and he discovered that the mold had killed the bacteria in the dish. So mistakes are great opportunities, and oftentimes, not oftentimes, there have been times when mistakes became an innovative thing. So I want to check in with Dianna. Dianna, where do you think the idea that mistakes are bad comes from?
Yeah, most of us probably learned early on, when we were younger at home, at school, and then as adults, like, at work. And we learned that mistakes equal consequences. So if you do this, if you do this wrong, then there are going to be some consequences. So there's a lot of, I don't want to say generational trauma, but it is, I mean, I know growing up, I was always told, like, don't make a mistake on your homework. Make sure it's perfect. Because it's kind of like you only get one chance, which isn't real, and there's also a lot of performance-based reward systems out there. So if you do this right, you're going to get this reward. That starts with, especially in like the health and wellness space, you're always looking for a reward, like, okay, if I eat well for the next 5 days, I'm going to be able to eat a chocolate chip cookie at the end of this. That's going to be my reward, so um diet culture also notorious. Back in like the 80s and 90s, that was a huge thing. And it's kind of trickled into today's time where food itself has been notorious for being labeled good and bad, right? So eating an Oreo is bad. That's a mistake in my diet.
Mm,
Eating kale is good. Eat
mm,
lots of kale, so it's always kind of like a black and white. Um, then there's always social media. We live in the age of social media, and can um, that can kind of paint a picture that mistakes are not accepted. And, it can start from as like an influencer kind of talking about like, especially if they're selling a product, for example. I used to make so many mistakes in my life, especially at work. And now I am taking this product and now I don't make any mistakes ever again, so that's just like a really simple example, but that's out there. And
oh,
making mistakes is not it's not an end goal. Like you said, it's data. I think,
yeah.
making mistakes is data. It's things not going to expectations. So really, I think when we were growing up and also now, like we were never really taught um, how to learn from our mistakes. We were
Mhm,
always taught how to avoid them.
mhm.
So that's that's
Yeah. You mentioned social media. That makes me think of how many times has somebody super popular done something that somebody didn't approve of, and suddenly they're canceled, and
Mhm.
all his followers are dropping out. It's like, well, it could have been a miss, whatever the reason is. somebody thought it was a mistake and like that's not allowed for you to do X, whatever that X is.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of generational, I caught myself this morning. I had my son maneuver and put this big cardboard, and he's like he couldn't quite figure out how to fit it into the space that I asked him to put it in. And standing kind of zoomed out a little bit, standing back, I was like, why is he doing it that way? Like, if you just do it this way, it'll just slot right in. So I'm just like, and I found myself judging him in that moment. And I could have taken what are you doing? Why are you doing it that way? Instead, I caught myself, thank goodness. I caught myself and I said, can I make a suggestion?
Mm-hmm.
What if you do it this way? Oh, okay. But before I did that, I let him struggle. Because
Mm-hmm.
what if he figured it out himself? And, we're pressed for time, we got to go. So I could totally see myself doing doing just that, is instilling some of those values and those expectations that mistakes are not okay. Even though I know, we're talking about it right now. I know that that's not something I really believe in, but it almost came out of my mouth. Interesting. How can we help ourselves reframe mistakes so that they support learning instead of self-judgment?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think allowing ourselves to process the mistake, like sitting with it, going through what it was that, like where we made the mistake, what it was that we did. And you want to try to separate the behavior from your identity. So, um, self-judgment could look like, I failed, I'm bad at this. I'm not good at this. The learning reframe could be, well, this strategy didn't work this time. How can I change it to adjust to where I am in that moment and what I can actually do. So like and thinking of it like, what I did didn't work. But that says nothing about who I am as a person. Because
Mm,
at the end of the day, we're human and humans make mistakes. We're not robots.
yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Love that.
Hmm.
Cool. I just noticed the time. Let's jump into pitfall number three. So we can try to get through a lot of these. So pitfall number three, mental and physical and emotional burnout. When we aim for perfection, we often overthink, overwork, and overdeliver. This can lead to mental, physical, and emotional burnout. It can show up as chronic self-criticism, damaged confidence, and never-ending pursuit of higher and higher standards. That was my husband. Every time he exceeded the standard, that was his new normal standard. And so he had to continue to um, out-achieve himself. At some point, our high standards quietly become unrealistic expectations. And this results in stress. And in fact, chronic stress, we know we know chronic stress is a thing that is just really, it's become an epidemic. In fact, in 2016, the World Health Organization classified stress as a modern health epidemic. Stress is good in small amounts and in short duration. Stress can be helpful. It can motivate us. It can help build resilience. It can get us out of a sticky situation in a moment. But chronic stress, not good. It can negatively impact our health. We know that heart disease is a problem, high blood pressure, chronic inflammation, sleep disruption. Again, my husband, anxiety, depression. I I witnessed all of this with him. Here's the reality. Reality is more if we have more realistic expectations, it creates more balance and it helps us manage our stressors more sustainably. Let's check in with our coaches. Lori, from the career and leadership perspective, for those of us who hold high standards for ourselves, how can we catch ourselves when we start to over effort?
Yeah, I know that's tough because, over efforting, it shows up as constantly pushing without pausing to assess impact. So if everything feels urgent, if rest feels earned instead of necessary, or if your standards just keep rising, but your satisfaction just keeps shrinking, that's a signal. So high standards are strength. And in our, in the professional environment, it's a great asset, but only when you're paired with sustainability. And leadership isn't about how much you can carry, it's more about what you can carry consistently. And that, for me, is something that I've had to learn. And it is very closely tied to health. So, when you talk to Diana there and it's health and wellness and your professional, it does. There's such an impact with that stress and burnout. And sometimes you don't even realize that you're burnt out until something is removed. And then it's almost as if it's a drug, that burnout. It was like almost like a drug. And so without that, you're like, what do I do? Because you're always looking for something else and you're always looking. And that stimuli is just constant. Um, I had taken a step back from something and I finally went on vacation and I didn't have to work on vacation. And that was the weirdest feeling for me. And I realized how burnt out I was when I thought to myself, I feel like my vacations, like I'm out on good time, like I've been imprisoned and I'm out on
Mhm.
good behavior. It really is like that. And so personally for me, I had to really take a step back and really readjust some things. And it was a very slow process because it was like a drug and it was like coming off of a drug. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but
Not at all.
you've got to be able to identify those signs early of burnout before it's too late because it takes a long time to get back to that normal where you feel like I'm doing what I need to do. I feel like I'm on top of it. I'm owning it. It's not
Hmm.
owning me.
Hmm. Oh my gosh. Again, you're giving me flashbacks from my career in corporate. I remember the very first vacation I took. I don't remember where I went, but I remember constantly checking my phone, checking my emails, responding to things. And then my boss said, "What are you doing? You're on vacation." So he called me out on it. And then fast forward some years later where I couldn't. I couldn't. And it felt weird and stifling at the same time. When I had my phone and I'm like, I should probably check my email to see if that client responded. And then I just couldn't bring myself to because I was just like, I can't think about that right now. Interesting. So I want to switch over to Diana. When it comes to career and leadership, naturally it makes sense that high expectations can come from our managers or our own desire to impress our managers or the organization to have those performance metrics come back and those evaluations come back with high marks. But when we're talking about health and wellness, is over efforting prevalent?
Yeah, it definitely is. It looks like, and this is something I'm guilty of doing, or feeling guilty for resting.
Mm,
I'm like, okay, I have to do this thing, and if I don't do it, I am not going to be working towards my goal. It's not going to do me any justice. When in reality, you have to build in rest and recovery. If especially if you have a very like tough exercise routine. Like if you're, working towards training for a marathon, for example, or training for anything, you have to build in that rest and recovery. So there's also the constant shoulds. I should be doing this. I should be doing that. Um, so I think like really doing a check-in with yourself. Um, Asking, is this sustainable on my hardest week? You have, for example, I have a calendar. and I look at the week ahead and I try to like kind of foresee when I am going to have the toughest day. And that's when I try to scale back a little bit. So checking in with the week ahead could be something. And then asking, what's also like the effective minimum dose that I can take right now. And it's I mean, we're always chasing something, and it could look like we're doing ourselves a service by doing that, like really wanting the best, being the best, but in reality, like it could be doing a disservice for us, and it's not sustainable.
Yeah. Uh, sorry. Yeah, and health and wellness isn't just about um, diet and exercise. It's also mental and emotional well-being. It's not just the physical aspect of it. So I can totally see the connection between career and leadership and then health and wellness, knowing to say, okay, well, it rest and recovery is important mentally and emotionally too.
Yeah.
So when I think about like, okay, well, where do we go with this? How can coaches, mentors, or other trusted circles, us trusted people in our circle support us when we're slipping towards burnout? How do we leverage the people around us?
So
Um,
the best support. Oh,
I'm sorry.
so, no,
Lori,
you're fine.
sorry, I should have
No,
picked
no,
somebody.
you're okay. It's absolutely okay. So I think the best support systems, they help normalize recalibration. So
Mm,
coaches and mentors can ask reflective questions. Peers can also model boundaries. Leaders can give permission. And if you're a leader, now this is the thing, if you're a leader, you can give permission to prioritize effectiveness over exhaustion. So I think it's important. So we're talking about leaders and we're talking about our careers, but we're also talking about leaders. So if I'm a leader, I need to make sure that as a leader that I am saying, hey, I want you to prioritize this, give them that assurability that I don't want you to work yourself to exhaustion. And sometimes that most powerful thing that someone can say is you don't have to prove your value by burning yourself out.
mm.
And not many of us hear that very often. And I think that, that's one of the things that I like to coach people on is as a leader, this is your responsibility. These people are your responsibility. So make sure that you're building them in a way that they're not exhausted, they're not burning out.
That's such an important point because I know like when I would overachieve something, instead of saying, but at what cost to you, I would get a lot of accolades, which would prompt me to do it again or do better. And so that would be building myself up to that overwork. What about in health and wellness, Diana?
Yeah, good support actually helps us notice things sooner. They can, for example, you have a health coach or that serves as an accountability partner, but when you look at having a friend or a partner or spouse, they can probably tell it to you like it is, like give it to you in real time, and they'll tell you like, you're doing too much. How can you what can you do to scale back, or what can I take off of your plate? So you might not you we might be so laser focused on the things that we're doing that we don't notice ourselves getting burnt out from like what Lori was talking about. So I think good support would really help us notice things a lot sooner than letting things kind of fester and get worse along the way.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And to kind of bridge that with what Lori said, I feel like there's something there about almost giving permission for that rest and recovery, right? Like just to say you might want to rest this time. Just to say it out loud, it helps. Okay. We're running short on time. So this has been such a great conversation. I want to switch over to reframe so we can help our viewers um, if once they kind of see some of those common pitfalls that they fall into, how do we reframe? We've already talked about some of that stuff, but when it comes to like reframe number one that I wanted to go over is I have to get it right. How do I go from I have to get it right to I'm learning as I go? How do I make that switch? And Lori, in your work with next gen leaders, how do you help clients shift from feeling like they have to get everything right? It's great that, if we want to try to leverage those leaders, but like you said, we don't hear that too often. How do we help people or help ourselves get from everything right to seeing our goals and careers as something that they learn along the way?
Yeah, I remind clients that leadership isn't something that you arrive at. It's something you grow into.
Mhm.
And we treat careers as experiments rather than exams. So that goes
Um,
back to the environmental things, but that means reflecting often. It's adjusting quickly. We've kind of recapped, this is kind of a recap of what we've already talked about, but
yeah.
adjusting those things quickly before they become an issue and recognizing that confidence usually follows action and
Mhm.
not the other way around. So when clients embrace learning over perfection, they start saying yes to stretch opportunities sooner. So they're not waiting. They're going into it. And that's where that real leadership readiness is built.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Total sense. In well, I was going to ask Diana the same question, but again, I'm looking at the time. Diana, let's talk about the reframe, the second reframe that I wanted to talk about. Mistakes are failure. How do we change from that mindset? Mistakes are failure to mistakes are feedback. I know we've touched about this, but let's dive a little bit deeper into this. In health and wellness, when people feel like that shame when they slip, like you said, they miss a routine or fall back into old habits. How can you help clients reframe mistakes so they become feedback instead of failure?
Yeah, well, so slips are totally part of the process because life isn't linear and we all are going to have setbacks and we're all going to, fall off of our program or whatever it is that we're trying to do to improve our health. So I like to support clients by naming the slip like neutrally, like, okay, you slipped. This is what happened. And then we explore the context behind it. What was happening that week? Were you under a lot amount of stress? Was it as a woman, like, was it your hormones just kind of going crazy and, time of the month? And then identifying what did work instead of focusing on what didn't work, because we already know what didn't work. Well, what did work? And then kind of bringing that back into the light just so that we can help readjust. And then recommitting gently, like you had a slip, it's part of the process. Let's get back on track with this new thing that we've equally decided on. So it's the goal really isn't never to slip.
Yeah,
It's to shorten the recovery time.
yeah. I love that. I love that. That makes total sense. It's really exactly what your specialty is, adjusting along the way. Oh, perfect. Okay, so actually I have two more reframes. Well, reframe number three. How do we switch from I must stay on track to I can dust myself off and try again? We're kind of already talking about that, right? This kind of being gentle with ourselves and whatnot. But then when you notice clients stuck in an all or nothing thinking, especially after a slip or a setback, how do you help them shift their thinking so that they can re-engage instead of give up? I love what you said, Diana, about just let's evaluate what happened, what worked and what didn't work, and then what are we going to do to kind of get back on this on your goal, and what are we adjusting in career and leadership? Lori, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's all of those things that Diana said, really, but you also, I help them zoom out. So it's important that everyone knows that one moment doesn't define you. It's not going to define your career. These are all growth opportunities. What did you learn from it? What might you do differently? But we look at patterns instead of isolated incidents. And we ask, what's the smallest next step that keeps you moving forward? And that comes with those micro shifts that we've been talking about, right?
Yeah.
It's those small things. And once those small things start compounding, you're making more and more momentum. So shrinking the setback makes it manageable, and then that momentum returns. So let's just take a step back. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing. What's those one small moves that you can make? And then let's just keep building upon that. And then that's what keeps that forward movement. And we keep moving forward. We're not going back. And it's hard because we talk about setbacks. Setbacks really don't take somebody all the way back most of the times. It just takes them slightly back, makes them think a little bit differently. And then we want to get them back to this and then moving them forward.
It's so easy to catastrophize though and say, oh, this one thing really ruined it for me, kind of thing. Now my leader's not going to see me the same way, or I'm just not cut out to be a triathlete, or whatever the goal is. But I feel like everything we've talked about so far really speaks to our last reframe here, which is to switch from an outcome focused success to progress focused success, is bite-sized pieces and celebrating those, adjusting along the way. In career growth, we know that like career, it has those milestones, the titles, the promotions. And when we're talking about like leaders supporting those micro steps. But Dianna, when we're talking about health and wellness, success is often measured by a number on a scale. Like if my goal is 50 pounds, how do I celebrate the small goals? I guess with those numbers, it's kind of, as long as we're on the right track, like Lori said, we want to see a trend or numbers on a lab. How often do we get our blood work? It's not every day. So
Mhm.
how do you track that? Or how a person looks or feels? The outcome isn't instantaneous. How do you help clients recognize progress before those outcomes are visible?
Yeah, a lot of times clients want that instant result, right? They want to see progress yesterday, and having that, like Lori said, zooming out and looking at, the broader picture when it comes to really shifting and changing your lifestyle and looking at what's sustainable. So I often like to ask clients and check in with them, how have you been feeling since you've been, implementing 30-minute walks into your day twice a week. So and like you said, it's not just a physical response, it's more mental, and oftentimes I find clients will say that they feel a lot of clarity. They feel that they have more space to take in other aspects of their life. So really kind of honing in on the thoughts that come to their minds, when they're working out and how they feel afterwards, right? So it's more of like the feelings and like the mental piece, rather than really focusing on, okay, I lost 10 pounds. That's what the scale says. So that's how I like to check in. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many more other indicators other than that big goal.
Right. Mhm.
What I love about what you both shared is that reframing doesn't require a big overhaul. It's a series of small shifts in how we think. We saw these examples in both the health and wellness space and also in the career and leadership space. There's There's little things that we can do. There's how we interpret setbacks and how we talk to ourselves. It's that mental thing. And that's exactly, as Lori said, what microshift method is all about is bite-sized pieces, celebrating along the way, having the support system that that is like-minded or that understands and appreciates the value of those micro shifts. Thank you so much for such an insightful conversation. Before we wrap up, though, I'd love to invite our guest coaches to briefly share about their coaching practices and how you can work with them. Um, Lori, do you want to kick us off with just sharing with us how about your coaching practice?
Yeah, so we're focused on next generation of leaders, which means that we're bridging the gap between generations right now so that our baby boomers can retire confidently and this next gen of leaders are prepared adequately to take those roles. And we're also doing succession planning with businesses. And so that's where our space is. We want everybody to succeed. We want, we work with individuals one-on-one, kind of like a wild card situation where they're like, hey, I've got this situation that I need help coach through. Then we have a master class preparedness from A to Z on leadership and being prepared. And then we do, again, work with businesses, getting those pipelines ready, ensuring that that transition takes place successfully.
Cool. And how can people get in touch with you?
Well, you can get in touch with me through IEA. You can also go to the website at 365horsepower.com. That's the company website. Or email me at info@365horsepower.com.
Cool. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you.
Dianna, would you like to share about your coaching practice?
Yeah, so I have a coaching practice that is focused on progress over perfection, and I work with individuals and actually, corporate executives to help manage, the burnout piece and the stress piece as well, and as well as working with women who are transitioning through the stage of life called perimenopause, and beyond, so that is something that I'm trying to like shout out at the rooftops about, and really bring to light that we just need to have more conversations about. But a lot of women are struggling with this and they don't know often like where to start and they're just overwhelmed by it all and adding on their daily lives, families, demanding jobs and extracurricular activities and that sort of thing. So yeah, I would like to help clients kind of narrow their focus a little bit and focus at one thing at a time. One, like showing up 1% more each day is progress, and it doesn't all have to be done at 100% all the time. So,
Yeah, yeah.
mhm.
And I love that you're working towards normalizing the conversations about perimenopause. It's so important because every woman will experience it.
Absolutely.
99% of them, I'm sure there are some anomalies where I never got my cycles or what, I
Yeah,
don't, whatever. But half the population is going to experience it or have already experienced it. We should be normalizing the conversations around it.
absolutely. Hmm.
Diana, how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can get in touch with me through the IEA platform. I'm on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect with everyone. And you can check out my website at humans-in-progress.com.
Oh, I love that. What a great website. Well, that's all we have for everyone today. I hope it was as insightful of a conversation for viewers. Those of you watching the replay, thankful for those of you who attended live. And until the next time, thank you so much for being here. Thank you, coaches.
Thank you.